Excellent. All right, my love. Well, welcome to the attachment theory workshop. I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Welcome to our little home away from home. I love it when I have these little virtual workshops because I get an incredible opportunity to connect with you. So if you are watching this on All Takes, this is a brand new platform. I'm super excited to be here. So if you hop in here, please make sure and say a little hello. So there should be a little chat box that's down in the corner. That's like a hot pink little chat box. So please make sure as I go through today's workshop, you might be having some questions. So I would love to save your questions until the end of our workshop. So if you can, click that little box and you could ask any question that you like, and I will make sure and answer it at the end. And also, I do want to, if you have any technical questions as we're navigating through this new platform, you can always send an email to support@alltakes.com. But all right, so that's all the housekeeping stuff. I wanted to make sure and get that out of the way, and I'm super excited that you're here. So really quick, if you're watching this, I would love to know, where do you live? I have been honored to give virtual workshops to women all over the world, from Europe and UK to Portugal to Canada to different states, United States, from New York to California. So if you can, as you're watching this, I would love to know, because I'll keep checking in and finding out where you all are located. So if you can, put it into the chat of where you live. Awesome. Okay, so here's a little bit about me. I know that the reason why you're here, you already have a pretty good understanding about who I am and who I serve. But as you all know, I'm a professional matchmaker and a dating coach for single professionals. And I have a podcast, which is called Dear Matchmaker. And I'm CEO of the agency that was officially opened January of 2022. And I'm super excited because since then, so this recording is in June of 2022. Since then, I have been responsible for over 21 dates and 3 relationships. I have been coaching for over a decade. I know on this slide I put 300 women. I promise you it's way beyond that. I kind of wish I would have kept a tally since the very beginning, but my passion is truly helping people find love. I've had the incredible experience of traveling with women all over the world, and I have been a successful business owner since 2013. Now, I want to make sure and remind everybody that as you're watching this, please feel free to add anything to the chat. What happens in this room stays in this room. So I just want to make sure that I have full disclosure that this is a safe place. We want to make sure that you understand that this is a place where we lift each other up. I want you to be yourself, and just like with every other interactive virtual workshop, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And so I think it's always just really important to go ahead and set the tone before we even begin, so that you understand that you are welcome to just be yourself here. And I want to make sure that you understand that you can ask any questions. Okay. There's all the housekeeping. And I do want to tell you that at the end of this presentation, I am going to be talking about your dating blueprint. So this is an exclusive offer that I have for those women who are watching this, who are a part of this workshop. I have something very unique and special to share with you at the end. All right. So in our little chat box, I want to ask you, how well do you know attachment theory? Now, this can it's okay if you are a complete four, you're like, I feel confident, I know my attachment, I know all about the attachment styles. I'm so happy that you've decided to spend time with me. So thank you. But in the chat, if you don't mind, could you put, so one, mean like you have no idea what attachment theory is, that you're here to learn. Two, meaning like you think you may know, and three, maybe like you know your style, but you want to learn more. So go ahead and put that in the chat so I can see. And I see a lot of twos, and a lot of threes. Yes. Good. Well, hopefully, the goal here of today, of this workshop, is to just give you a little bit more insight, a little bit more information so that you become more aware. Because I think we know what we can know more about, we know about who we are, right? And our attachment style. But at the end of the day, it's important to know all styles because you're going to encounter someone from every different style. I promise you. And I promise you that this is gonna open your mind to the people that you work with, to your friends, to your family. You're gonna be able to learn more about these styles and be able to, like, pinpoint, go, "Oh my gosh, I bet you this person is this and this person is this." So my goal is to hopefully increase it at least by a point 0.5, at least. That is my hope. Okay. So what is attachment theory? So the definition of attachment theory is that it's the manners in which people perceive and respond to intimacy in romantic relationships. And this is based off of how we were loved as babies. And they're finding out, yes, it has to do with how we were loved and how we received intimacy as babies, but also they're finding more connections with genetics. They're still doing more studies on that. And your adult relationships, your adult romantic relationships can play a part. So you may have been raised in a certain attachment style, but the romantic relationships that you've been in as an adult can change that. And I'm one that can tell you that I have probably been in my life all 3 different attachment styles based off of my romantic history, based off of my upbringing. I can see myself in each one of these styles, and I know that you probably can too. So, a little bit of science for you. So, the attachment system is a mechanism in our brain that is responsible for tracking and monitoring the safety and availability of our attachment figures. We were born with this attachment system. It's a mechanism that helps us survive. So this tracks, uh, this is a system that is in our brains that's responsible for tracking and monitoring the safety and availability of our attachment figures because we know that there's power in numbers. There's we're programmed and we are I mean, we're animals that we're programmed that we know that there is safety and security in numbers. So this is something that's inside of us. So this is all based off of all of this got started based off of a main study back in the 1950s by Dr. John Bowlby, who underwent a studying babies about back then they thought the only two things that people needed to survive was food and shelter. And they found out, no, there's a lot more to that. And I'm not going to go into the whole study, but I do want to let you know that this is where the basis of it comes from. And then Mary Ainsworth is really the the next generation that she really took a deeper dive instead studying, excuse me, infants. Okay. Why is attachment theory important? So this is something that I've presented to companies and this is something that I've presented to networking groups because you're going to find that this attachment style also leaks into your relationships and your coworkers and how you work with your boss. And so I'm a firm believer that every person, no matter if you're married or in a relationship, doesn't matter, single, every person should know what their attachment style is. And it's important to know how other people's attachment styles work and how they function because it makes us better people and having more empathy and understanding where people are coming from. All right. So I'm sure you already know, but let's go ahead and move on. So, what are the 3 different styles of attachment? There's actually 4, but the 3 different styles is secure, anxious, and avoidant. And then there is 3 to 5% of the population is anxious avoidant, but it's not as common as these 3. So the secure attachment style is someone who feels comfortable with intimacy and is very warm and loving, and this is 50% of the population. And believe it or not, secure singles do not stay single for long. In fact, the moment they become single, they're the ones that are usually snatched up right away. The majority of singles is the avoidant attachment style, and I'll go into that in just a moment. So next is anxious. So the anxious attachment style craves intimacy and is preoccupied with their relationship, constantly worrying about their partner's ability to love them back. That's 20% of the population. And then the avoidant attachment style equates intimacy with a loss of independence and consistently and constantly tries to minimize closeness. And this is 25% of the population. And most of singles are avoidant attachment. And we're going to go into each attachment style and what each of them really mean. But I think it's important to mention that a fourth of people change their attachment styles roughly every 4 years. So as I give this presentation, as I give this workshop, I I bet that you're going to be able to see parts of yourself in each style. And maybe with one relationship, you were this particular way. In another relationship, you were this particular way. One of my goals with this workshop is to tell you that you're not alone and you're not crazy and that there's nothing wrong with you. Okay. So, all right. So let's move on. So, anxious attachment. Do you like my little pictures? I feel like this is me. I'm a recovering anxious attachment. Even sometimes there are some tendencies, sometimes things trigger me and those kinds of things happen, but I feel like that this is me too. It's just like I'm like this. So, anxious attachment, what are the signs if you're an anxious attachment? So, anxious attachment styles, they have a fear that their partner does not wish to be as close as they want them to be. They also are afraid that they are too needy. They are usually the people pleasers. Intimacy and closeness is very easy for them. In fact, it's much easier for anxious to move into a secure attachment style than it is for an avoidant because they are so open and willing to be vulnerable. These are usually the types that will overshare. If you've ever been on a date, that used to be me. I remember walking into the first date being like, let me just unload all of my garbage to you. Here you go. That used to be me. Yep. Guilty, guilty, guilty. So anxious attachment do tend to overshare. And they're the ones that are very eager to make things exclusive, to make sure and have that commitment with their partner. Unfortunately, anxious attachment, their relationships do consume them, and it takes a huge amount of their energy, and they are unable to calm down until they know that their partner is there for them and that they are safe. Because remember, this is a mechanism that's stored in our brain that it like scans and we want to make sure that our who we're attached to is safe and secure. Now, I do want to mention there is a little bit of a superpower that comes with the anxious, and it's that the anxious are more intuitive. So, as the anxious grew up, when they were babies, the intimacy that was in their lives was not consistent. And they say that those with more of an anxious attachment style usually come from a divorced family where one parent was consistent and maybe one parent was absent or never there or just kind of coming and going. And it was always that, are they going to pay attention to me? Am I going to see them this weekend? So when the anxious, they have this fear of constantly losing that intimacy. And so this is why they hang on. The anxious are always scared of losing someone. So their intuitiveness or their intuition when something is wrong, it's inside of them and it's been inside of them since they were little, where they can feel or sense that something's going on with their partner. So they have this intuition and I know because I'm one of them because sometimes I'm like this with Brian where I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? Are you okay?" Like, I can sense when something's wrong, and he's always like, "I'm fine." I'm like, Something's wrong." So if that's you, most likely you are feeling like this is a thing. Like, you can pick up on other people's emotions. However, you can jump to conclusions where you think it's you and it's really has nothing to do with you. And Brian and I have had that conversation where he's like, "Yeah, I'm upset, but it has nothing to do with you." I'm always like, "Phew." But again, he's giving me that reassurance and he's letting me know. Okay. So, what are common thoughts of those that have anxious attachment? So, uh, they think that they can read each other's mind. They think they can read, they're mind readers. So, they always have this feeling that they're never going to find anybody else. So, anxious are more prone to settle when it comes to relationships or to be with somebody for a much longer than they're supposed to or that they should. They'll say things like, "Oh, I knew this relationship was too good to last," or "I knew it was too good to be true." Or they'll have all or nothing thinking where they say to themselves, "I've ruined everything. There's nothing I can do to mend this situation. They can't treat me that way. I'll show them." Yeah. Anxious, like, unfortunately, they're the ones that have sometimes the vendettas. They want revenge. They do some game playing. Uh, Anxious attachment always will say, "Well, I knew something would go wrong and things never work out for me." They will maybe go through extremes where they'll want to change their appearance. They'll want to lose weight. They'll all of a sudden become seductive or start dressing differently and hope that the situation with their partner will work out. So they take it on themselves and change themselves. And they'll also put their significant other on a pedestal, make them way better than themselves. So they'll say to themselves, "Oh my gosh, well, this person is so amazing. Why would they want to be with me anyway?" So that's like a form of self sabotage. Also, the anxious attachment, when they fight with someone, they have a tendency to bring out all of the bad things about their partner. But the moment things are resolved, then they romanticize and fantasize about their partner, and all they do is remember the good things. So, if you've had people in your life, or maybe you're one of them, where there is this constant energy of like you're with your ex, you break up, and then you romanticize, "Oh, but they were this and they were this and things weren't so bad." Most likely you're an anxious attachment. And so they'll get back together. And then the moment they get back together, then you realize, "Oh my gosh, why did I get back with this person? This person has all these qualities." And then they break up. And we're going to talk about the anxious avoidant loop. We're going to talk about that in just a moment because that is a real thing. And we go into a much deeper dive during my virtual seminar, Dating Blueprint, but I'm going to go over that in just a moment. So we go over that. But these are common thoughts of the anxious attachment. So when it becomes activated, meaning when someone starts to pull away or they start to sense that something is wrong, they have their attachment becomes activated and they become consumed with thoughts of the other person, and they have one single purpose, and that is to reestablish closeness with their partner. So these thoughts that come in, so their anxious attachment becomes activated because they feel like someone's pulling away, and they they get consumed with thoughts that will automatically help them feel like they're establishing closeness with their partner. So these are what they call activating strategies. So, some examples of activating strategies. So, the definition of an activated strategy is thoughts and feelings that compel them to seek closeness with their partner. So, this is when someone, if there's an issue, or maybe you've been in the situation where, for example, you're starting to date someone and you shoot them a text, and normally they get back to you right away, and they're not. And there's this like void. And maybe a couple hours go by and you're like, "Oh my gosh, why isn't this person responding to my text?" So you can't focus on anything else but this person. And why aren't they texting me back? And what's going on? And maybe they're breaking up with me, or maybe they're ghosting me, right? So this is the anxious. So your attachment system has now been activated. The moment when you do get that text back, whether hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, your dopamine kicks in. And when your dopamine kicks in, this is why Instagram, all the likes, we all are addicted to the dopamine. When the dopamine kicks in, you automatically feel better. And the problem with that is that the anxious misinterpret this as love versus anxiety, because this is really anxiety that's driving this. When their attachment system is activated, they underestimate their own talents and their abilities while putting the other person up on a pedestal, which I already kind of talked about that. They remember only the good qualities of someone, even though they're unhappy in a relationship, they will not let go. They have this false sense of hope where don't worry, things will change. They say things to themselves like, "Oh, all couples have these problems." Or they even have this greater fear that if they break up with the person, that they're going to be a much better partner for someone else. And so we as an anxious attachment, you have these thoughts because you want to establish closeness, there we go, to your partner. Now, when you're trying to establish your attachment style has been activated. You feel like the person is pulling away, so it's been activated and you're doing what you can to establish closeness and it's not helping. So you're trying to get that closeness, you're not getting the intimacy that you're craving. So then what ends up happening is what they call protest behavior. And this is exclusive to the anxious. Protest behavior is any action that tries to reestablish contact with their partner to get attention. So you shot them that text, they haven't texted you back in 3 hours. You're consumed, you're wanting to establish contact with this person, you're unable to do it. It's a sense of like you're out of control. So you go through other ways of trying to so now you go through protest behavior. So you're going to establish other ways to try to contact them. Maybe you go to their Insta stories and view their Insta stories. Maybe you go to their Facebook and find out who have they liked. Or maybe you'll post something on Facebook in hopes that maybe they'll like your picture. So you start to go through other ways of trying to make contact or you withdraw. So those with anxious attachment will withdraw. So maybe finally you get that text back and then you're like, I'm not going to respond. They took 4 hours to respond to me, so I'm not going to respond to them until tomorrow, which is, by the way, the worst thing that you can do. As your coach, the best thing for you to do is to contact them back and to tell them how these things make you feel. We're going to cover that in a minute. Those with anxious attachment have a tendency to keep score. They act hostile. They're the ones who threaten to leave. They're the ones who play the games. They also, if there is some kind of argument or some kind of fight, they will never be the first one to reconcile. They'll wait for the other person to reconcile. They are the ones who will always in a way to protest is that they'll act that they're too busy or unapproachable. So you've been waiting forever for this person to contact you. Finally, they contact you and you're too busy. All of the dating advice for the last decade, probably not the last couple years, but before that, the whole waiting for 3 days before you contact them, don't text them right away, act unapproachable, act aloof. All of this dating advice is like the worst advice that you can give an anxious attachment because this just feeds into their protest behavior, just feeds into it, as you can see. They also will go through lengths to try to make the other person jealous. So maybe they'll talk to their best friend or go through huge steps to try to make this person jealous. So here's what happens. So the attachment system has been engaged. They have trying to attempt thoughts of closeness. Now they're going through protest behavior, trying to establish that, trying to find a connection because they cannot calm down until they get that contact, until the dopamine, until they feel that they're getting reassurance from their partner that everything's fine, that they're safe. So it's really important if you date an anxious attachment to understand that all they're doing is trying to reestablish connection with you. It's not that they're being needy. They're trying to reestablish connect. And the moment you tell them that it's okay, that we're okay, I was this, I was that, it's not that they want to know everywhere, where you've been. It's that they just want to make sure that that connection is still there for them, that they're not losing you, that they're not losing that intimacy. And the more reassurance that you can give an anxious, the better. And we go into this in much greater detail in the dating blueprint. Okay, now moving on. Avoidant attachment. What are the signs for an avoidant attachment? So before I go into this, a majority of my clients are avoidant attachment. They're either avoidant or anxious. And avoidants have a bad rap. And I feel it's actually quite the opposite. So in the research that I've done about avoidant attachment is the avoidants try to minimize their pain of rejection by pretending they actually don't want to connect. Because I'm sure you've dated an avoidant. I have, where you think to yourself that there's something wrong with you, that there's something off. Why doesn't this person want to connect with me? And it's because they truly, avoidants want to have that connection, but they are so afraid of rejection. So the anxious, they did get some form of intimacy. They just never knew where it was coming from. That's why they hang on when they get it. The avoidant's different. They never really had that intimacy growing up. So they had to rely on themselves. They had to become independent. They had to become self-sufficient because they felt like they had nobody to lean on. And it's much safer for them to not be open, they feel to not be vulnerable and to not be open because they don't want to be rejected. They're so afraid of rejection. They also don't believe that they can rely on others to meet their emotional needs. So they avoid getting too close to anybody. And with the anxious, they want all the intimacy. They want all the things. They want to know everything. They want to really jump in. The avoidant, the more that intimacy increases, the more they're going to pull away. So here are some common traits of an avoidant. So they always consider themselves as like a free spirit. So if you've ever been like, oh, I'm free spirit, I just go wherever I want, I'm independent, self-sufficient, most likely you're an avoidant. This is a way that we protect ourselves. Also, avoidants are always waiting for their twin flame or waiting for the one. So they'll start to date someone and they're constantly worried that maybe this isn't the one. And so they'll break up thinking that when the one comes into their lives, that everything is going to be perfect. And it's not a thing. They always keep people at a distance, both mentally and physically. They're so quick to think negatively about people and partners. So they see people as needy and overly dependent. We talk about the negative bias in the dating blueprint. We talk about that. They also ignore their own needs of intimacy and fears about relationships. They're constantly worried about losing their independence and self-sufficiency. In fact, this is why when we talk about, and I know I've mentioned it, the anxious avoidant loop, because they're very attracted to one another, they will see the anxious will see the avoidant as emotionally unavailable. The avoidant will see the anxious as too needy and dependent. So when the anxious puts all of their weight into a romantic relationship, the avoidant is much different. The avoidant does not worry about romantic relationships at all or being rejected. And they very much have this high alert of control. So they're always in the fear of like losing control of their independence and they want to make sure that they keep their distance. And one of the things that I cover in the dating blueprint is we talk about the dependency paradox, where you actually become more independent when you're in a relationship. So for those that avoid it, I know that you're super scared, but there is hope for you, I promise. And the thing that gets to me the most is that with avoidance, they have this very much this deep rooted sense of loneliness even when they're in a relationship because they don't know, they've never been taught the true, like, secure relationship and what it's like to have intimacy, secure intimacy in their life. So, uh, a fun fact is that avoidance they're not attracted to one another because they cannot feel this strong and independent in relation to someone who feels the same way. And we're going to cover, again, this is the whole anxious and avoidant loop that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But yeah, most likely, if you're an avoidant, I promise you that you've never dated an avoidant in the past. Okay. Common thoughts of avoided attachment. So, all or nothing thinking. I knew they were right. I knew they weren't right for me, and this proves it. So, they overgeneralize. So, I knew I wasn't made to be in a close relationship. I've heard this, and when people say to me that I'm not programmed to be in a relationship, or I'm not, relationships aren't for me. It just, I feel like that's part of my job too, is to consistently prove to you and show you that everyone deserves to be in a loving relationship. Everybody, no matter your attachment style. They'll have other thoughts like, this person is taking over my life. I can't take it. Now I have to do everything their way. You can see how these thoughts are all about like losing their independence. I feel like I need to get out of here. I need space. Oh, if this person was the one, then this wouldn't be happening. They just want to tie me down. I'm better off on my own. They are so needy. So these are common thoughts of an avoidant attachment when they are navigating and dating and in relationships, navigating through the dating world, I should say. Okay. So when the avoidant is the complete opposite of the anxious. So the anxious, when someone is pulling away, their attachment becomes activated. When the avoidant feels the threat of intimacy, when things are getting too close, it becomes deactivated. They start to disengage from their partners and employ techniques known as deactivating strategies. And these strategies suppress suppress the attachment system, the biological mechanism in our brains responsible for our desire to seek closeness with a preferred partner. So it deactivates. When this becomes deactivated, then they start these techniques, which are called deactivating strategies. Okay. What are deactivating strategies? So it's behavior or thoughts that are used to squelch intimacy. So they will start to make room. All of a sudden they'll start pulling away, either mentally or physically. They'll start focusing on small imperfections of someone where it's like, God, I just wish they wouldn't chew that way. Or have you seen how they walk? Why do they drive that way? I don't like those shoes that they wear. Avoidance will start nitpicking because it justifies to them why they shouldn't be in that relationship. They'll start pining for old relationships. So avoidants are more prone to going back to exes because they start to, because, okay, here's the reason why. So the threat of intimacy is there for them so much that they will push away. So they'll push a person away and they'll, let's just say, break up. So after they break up, that threat of intimacy is no longer there. And they'll start to have thoughts again about why they liked this person. and why they were attracted to this person. And they'll be like, "Why was I threatened? Why did I feel?" And they really are confused. Like, "Why was I feeling that way? I really do miss having this person in my life." And then they'll get back together with their ex, and then the moment they get back together, the threat of intimacy becomes a real thing again, and they'll break up. So this is why it's a cycle. They'll say things like, "I'm not ready to commit." They'll pull away again when things are going well. They don't say, they have a harder time saying I love you. They will keep secrets. They'll avoid any type of closeness, any kind of personal closeness. This is why people say that they are emotionally unavailable. They'll flirt with others, make critical remarks of their partners, and they just, as much space as they can create between themselves and their partners, they will do that. So, avoidantly attached people are so good at pushing other people away that the only time that they end up in a relationship is when the other person is especially persistent. Avoidants want to have intimacy, but they find that usually the only time avoidants are in a relationship is when the other person is very persistent. And usually it's an anxious, right? Does that make sense? So, the thing about anxious and avoidant is that the avoidant will only feel independent and powerful only to the extent that their partner feels needy and capable. The more needy that they feel that their partner is, the more independent they feel, which again solidifies why they feel the way that they feel. Okay. Which this leads into the anxious and avoidant trap. Again, this is that we're going to cover this much more in the dating blueprint. Go into a much deeper dive because actually there's an entire chapter, my sisters, an entire chapter in attached that talks about this avoidant anxious trap. And I kind of covered a little bit why that is, why they're attracted to one another. And I think it's important to mention that the avoidants do want intimacy. They know that they want it, but the threat of when it becomes too close for comfort, it just becomes too uncomfortable. At the end of all of this, one of the reasons why it's a trap is that the both of them feel trapped that they can't express their needs to one another. Especially the anxious. The anxious is so afraid because they've been in so many relationships with the avoidant where they're constantly told that they're needy, so they're so afraid to express their needs. The possibility of rejection. So the anxious will start dating the avoidant. This is just a little bit of some insight of why this becomes a trap. So the avoidant is getting what they need because the more needy that the anxious is, the more the avoidant, it's confirming their independence. In addition, the anxious confuses the anxiety that they feel with love on this roller coaster ride of this relationship. And the anxious is doing the chasing. Again, like I said, usually the only reason why avoidants are in relationships is because most likely an anxious has chased them into it, usually. Not always, not always, not unless they're in a relationship with a secure. But it does happen. And so the anxious will chase the avoidant, and the possibility of getting a rejection will create anxiety within the anxious, and they confuse that with butterflies. And so the more the avoidant pulls away, the more intense those butterflies feel within the anxious, the more that they think it's love. So much so that the anxious attachment system it's activated, right? So the avoidance pulling away, the anxious, their attachment system has been activated and they confuse this with like passion and love. So if you're an anxious and you find you start to date someone and the next time that you're dating someone you start to feel anxious or insecure or obsessive about the person, only to feel elated and get that like shot of dopamine when you finally get that text message, after the adrenaline roller coaster ride of trying to get the person's attention when you're protesting, by the way. And then you finally get that attention from the avoidant and you get that shot of dopamine. This is not love. This is an activated attachment system. Because listen, true love, true love is not a roller coaster ride. It's a peace of mind. It's secure. It's safe. It's a soft place to land. And the anxious sometimes will find themselves where they're starting to date a secure and find them too boring. We're like, wow, that date was boring. And these are all things, again, that I work with you in the dating blueprint. Okay, moving on. Okay, secure attachment. So, what are the signs if you are a secure attachment? Well, you're very comfortable. You're very comfortable with yourself. You never have to worry about losing love, and you expect others to be loving and responsive. You're very comfortable with intimacy, and you are able to communicate your needs easily. Now, I think the secure means it's a secure attachment. The avoidant and the anxious avoidant, right, are insecure attachments. So the insecure attachments really have difficulties of being able to express their needs. The secure has no problem. They are also when if you're in a secure attachment, you're always available. You're available and you act accordingly of what's currently going on. So, what are the common traits of a secure attachment? So, if you're secure, you're mentally flexible and you are an extremely effective communicator. You don't play the games. You don't want to have anything to do with it, actually. Most likely, when you see someone starting to play games, you go, mm-mm, red flag. I'm not here. I'm not in this. You're very comfortable with closeness and intimacy. If you're secure attachment, you're very quick to forgive. There's no protesting, there's no pulling back, there's no withdrawing. You're also secure in your power to improve the relationship. Now, here's the most powerful thing, the most amazing thing about a secure attachment. A secure attachment, if they're in a relationship with an avoidant or an anxious, they can help those two insecure attachment styles to become secure. That was me and Brian. I know that I was secure. I felt that I was secure when I started dating Brian, but he absolutely was secure and we started dating. There was some anxious attachment that I had to work through. Sometimes I do, but he's secure that he grounds me. And he's an amazing conflict buster, which is one of the common traits of a secure attachment. So conflict busters, so they don't generalize and they maintain focus of the problem at hand. So Brian always has this thing where he's like, don't stack problems. Like we're going to address the problem at hand. And they also tend to their partner's upsets before things escalate. The anxious and avoidant loop, boy, do things escalate. It becomes a huge roller coaster ride. Things stack and they don't communicate because, again, they're not communicating their needs. All they know is that they feel a certain way and they can't seem to express it. Secures have no problems with that. They can express it with no problem. So they're really good at managing conflict. And this is why it's so important in the dating world for you to spot secure attachment because, again, they're not single for very long. Brian wasn't. I always tell him all the time. I'm like, man, I am so glad I snatched you. It got to you before no one else did. Uh, they're really good at helping those with insecure attachments to become secure. They are also they wear their heart on their sleeves. They're not afraid of intimacy and they are extremely courageous and honest with their interactions. So, okay. Big question. So now we know about all three styles. How do you determine attachment in others? So, as you're kind of navigating and figuring things out, how do you determine attachment in others? So, it's important with disclosure, you don't want to rely on one symptom because people can be both anxious and avoidant. And maybe in certain circumstances, they could be anxious in this relationship and avoidant in this other relationship. I think it's important to kind of mention that. So, when you are observing, these are things that you need to ask yourself. So, are they doing or not doing something because they want to minimize intimacy? Assess assess how preoccupied they are about the relationship and assess the reaction to effective communication. And I think the most important thing, honestly, again, these are things that we cover in a much deeper dive, but listen and look for what they are not saying. You all know that I always say, people say, like, we have to listen in the dating world. You must listen truly to what people are telling you. Oh, they didn't mean it. Oh, no, listen and look for what they are for what they are saying and for what they are not saying. I think it's important to also pay attention because it's not clear as day, right? I think it's important for you just to pay attention to be able to, I mean, yes, you can go through all of the different signs for each, but to just pay attention and be mindful. This goes hand in hand with being mindful, being a mindful dater, right? Okay. So, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Uh, did you learn? I would love to know. So if you can, put it in the chat. So was one like, did you at least go up like a point 0.5? So if you were 2, did you go up to a point 2.5? What do we got? Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, you learned. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Good. Excellent. So, if you would like to have a copy of this book, I'm going to go ahead and put something in the chat right now. There is the official test that goes along with the book. I do want to encourage you that with the book, that there are tests at the beginning, and you can also take a test with a potential partner to figure out what your attachment styles are. So there's so much more I did not cover because I know that this is only an hour workshop. So much more that I cover. I do want to mention too, out in the studio, there are 3 different checklists that you can take a look at if you're a secure, avoidant, or anxious, on checklists that you need to things to look for to have a secure relationship. Okay? So you wanna make sure and check those out. All right. I know I've been talking about it. So, I have been doing so much work for all of you for the last, oh my gosh, 2 years. So I am having this is the first time ever. This is introductory. I'm having my virtual seminar. I'm calling the Dating Blueprint. It's June 25th, 26th from 12 to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. This is brand new, never done before. And one of the things that I have learned in my coaching is that we have specific problems as daters. Daters have specific problems that they want quick solutions. And this dating blueprint is designed for that particular reason. This is designed for people who are frustrated with their dating lives. So now that you know your attachment style, how do you implement this into the dating world? How do you recognize other attachment styles, even just through a text message? How can you attract secure partners? Because both the anxious and the avoidant struggle with self regulating. So, one of the things that I work with my clients is that the moment they either start pulling away or that secure or the attachment style becomes activated and they start going through protest behavior, How do they self-regulate? And these are all things that we cover in the dating blueprint because now that you have the knowledge, how do you put this into action? So I teach about all of that and how to become more secure, how to attract secure partners, how to spot anxious or avoidance when you're dating or within the first couple of texts. I cover the myth about chemistry and how this whole idea of chemistry and butterflies is actually preventing you from finding your partner. How you are online dating all wrong. Online dating profile or online dating is an algorithm. You're actually teaching it to deliver wrong matches to you because it's common. I mean, women and men all the time come to me. They're like, "Where are the good people at? I can't find them. Where are they at?" And I'm like, "They're there. Believe me. I talk to all of you. They're all there. I know that they're there." So we cover about that, about how you're online dating all wrong. I go into a much deeper dive about the dependency paradox. I also teach you the difference between looking for a life partner or looking for Mr. or Miss right now. There's a difference. And I used to have the saying when I was single, I used to go out where I would go out with my girlfriends and I'd be like, is he Mr. Right or is he Mr. Right now? Because we feel like we can get wrapped up into the chemistry or the lust of someone, and I'm sure maybe you've had this experience where you have like these whisk away weekends with this person. You're like, "Oh, this is great. This is awesome. I feel awesome. This is great." And the person, when you get back, they like pull back. That's more like of a prom date, right? That's more of like someone who hops on your Instagram. It's like an Instagram filter on your life. That's not what we're designed to do. I want to help you find your life partner. And honestly, my job as a coach is that I don't want you to need me anymore. I don't want you to need my podcast anymore. I don't. I want to give you as many tools as I possibly can within a short amount of time to help you have an empowered dating life and to help you find your forever person, help you find your life partner. I also cover the top 6 traits of every successful relationship, and it isn't what you think. And online dating kind of hurts that. We go into all of that. I'm also going to talk about the 10 steps for designing better dates so you can have a greater success rate. Because one of the things that I hear all the time, you're like, yeah, I have the first date, but what I can never get to the second date. Or you have a second date and you're like, "God, I can never make it to the third date." So we cover all of that and so much more. Here are a few testimonials from my clients that I have gathered throughout the years. And I think it's important for you to know as you're watching this, as you're been a part of this workshop, I think it's important for you to know that you're not alone. That this is why I wanted a seminar where it's close knit. I'm only accepting 6 to 8 into this seminar for next weekend. I'm not going to put a room of 20 people in there because I want to have, not only do I want to present these topics to you, to do a much deeper dive about your attachment style, to help you navigate online dating. Because, 70% of online dating, 70% of profiles are men, 42% of Tinder profiles are people that are attached or married. Like, how do you navigate through all of that? I want to help you on so many different levels in your dating life to give you a crash course, to give you the blueprint, to set you up for success so that you know more about yourself, know more about what you're looking for. What are the important traits of a successful relationship, of a secure partner? Because how do I avoid being in that anxious avoidant loop, right? Ultimately, my goal is to give you as much information to set you up for success so you don't need me. I want you to find your person. So, it is June 25th, 26th from 12 to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. I hope that you will join me and you will consider, since you are watching this and you've been a part of this attachment style workshop, you get $100 off. This is a $1,500 value, and I'm only pricing it since it's an introductory rate. I'm only pricing it at $337, but since you're watching this and you're a part of this, you can have $100 off using the code all cats. So I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the chat. And the moment you sign up, I will be contacting you and be sending you your homework because you're going to have some homework before we begin. So this is a first come, first serve basis, and I'm only taking 6 to 8 spots. All right. Are there any questions? I know that I just covered a lot of material. Are there any questions? It's okay if you don't have any. You learn to identify attachment styles. Good, 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 good. Oh, you were surprised. Yes. Surprised that secure was 50%. Yep. I know. What does that say? That you're who you're attracted to, right? Who you're attracted to. If you are struggling finding secure, and I bet you've had run-ins or you've been able to like go on dates with secure, but maybe you found them too boring. It's a thing. Do I recommend any books to read or anything to help us? Absolutely. So I would recommend again Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller. So you can just purchase it on Amazon. Another book that I would recommend is Speaking in Thumbs. This is one that is really good. It's written by a psychiatrist. Her name is Mimi Winsberg. Really good. And again, material that I found in a lot of these books, I'm covering at the Dating Blueprint. You want to make sure and sign up. Coupon code, it ends on Sunday. So you want to make sure and grab it and grab your spot. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm so glad you guys were here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So this is where you can find me. You can always, if you want, I do one-on-one coaching. It's invite only. It's not open to the public. So if you are interested, you can just contact me, kat@theheartagency.com, and we can have a discussion. We can set up a free 15-minute call and we can go from there. And you know where to find me. You know, I have the podcast and Instagram. That's where a lot of you have come from. So, yeah. So, you can find me over there. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for attending. It's been such an incredible honor. I hope to see you at the Dating Blueprint. For those that are here locally, I will offer it in person. Just don't know when those dates are, but I hope you'll join me virtually. And thank you again. And hopefully you learned something about attachment today. All right. I'll see you guys later.